With the stroke of a pen, Trump's trying to undo everything we've worked so hard for. But as indigenous people, our existence is our resistance. We protect Mother Earth and the water because it's who we are and we have no other choice. I'm facing 7 years in prison, yet I remain dedicated to peace and prayer. Pray with us.
Desculpa, mas tem umas janelas abertas sobre o vídeo aí, tampa as imagens.
One family. If we don't stand, who will? On earth. The wind comes in four corners, four directions, four colors. And death rides on four horsemen. A black snake with some black tanks. How much money do these companies need to make? They could drop their product, but they wanna save a buck. Already extracted billions, when is enough? I used to be in the oil fields, getting paid, but I quit, cause oil water I can't drink. Look down and see Kamimi die in the mud. I looked up and told myself that enough's enough. Money does not own my soul, living comfortable. It's not in my plans, my hands in the sand. Some things worth more than gold. Some things they can't be sold. Some things can't be replaced. She is your mother, the fresh water is her veins. What is going on? Have we all lost our minds? Every human needs clean water to survive.
We're sorry. Your call cannot be called.
Martin County Sheriff's Department.
Hi. I need to report an assault.
Okay, where did it occur at?
Standing Rock. There are innocent, unarmed people being attacked with water in militia-style police firing at point-blank range with high-powered mace on unarmed people. Who protects the people?
Ma'am, yeah, if there's police there, then it has
The police are the ones attacking innocent, unarmed people. So what do we do to stop the police literally hitting people at point-blank range in the face? People can lose eyes. People are going to get hypothermia. People could die. We have elders here. We have children here. We have all ages here. Nobody is armed except for the police. Who protects the people from the police?
Well, I guess if you want to put it up the chain of command, the next person to talk to would be the governor's office.
Love is the strongest, this path is the hardest. But if we were strong enough to do it, we wouldn't see it. Our prayers would not be needed. This movement's very needed. Indigenous wisdom unheeded and sacred things depleted. I'm Mexicano, Malacota, and I'm white too. I'm mixed with everyone, so part of me's just like you. Every group of human beings shares the same stars. And if the earth is not your mother, are you from Mars? Since 1492, 500 years and counting. Surviving the genocide they call colonizing my turtle island. What is a fossil fuel? Continued destruction, nothing new. Live in a system, taking our children, shifting their feelings till nothing's true. I had that money in front of me, but I left it. Cause oil money's dirty if my mother gets disrespected. We're disconnected, these times are hectic and feeling heavy. But still we love all living beings and suffer for the many. We are peaceful people, that's why we walk with prayer. And if that wasn't true, we wouldn't be standing here. We're peaceful people who walk with prayer. Turtle Island, have no fear. Despite what they show in the media, we're kind people, hold your ground. Change is coming now.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. That was Prolific the Rapper. For those of you who don't know and haven't been blessed with his magic, él era Prolific el Rapero. Si no lo conocen, es maravilloso. So welcome everybody. Before we get started, antes de que comencemos, I wanted to just give an announcement that we do have interpretation today. Tenemos interpretación para las personas que hablan español, for our English speakers, for our people who speak Portuguese, las personas que, as pessoas que falam português. Então, we're going to have speakers today who speak English, Portuguese, and we want to make sure that I want to draw our attention to the bottom. There is a globe. Abajo en su Zoom, en su ventana del Zoom, hay una imagen de un mundo. Y si ustedes hablan español, si ustedes hablan portugués, pueden hacer clic en o icono do mundo. You can click on the icon because there will be at some point some folks who will be speaking even for English speakers. Great. I hope that was everything. If our translators present have anything they'd like to add, please give me a sign. If not, we will move on with our show today. All right, cool. So welcome everybody. My name is Nidia Alicia. I am a Chicana Indígena climate justice activist, organizer, educator, whatever my people need me to be. I struggle for liberation from the intersections of migrant justice, climate justice, and indigenous rights. It's an honor to be hosting the People's Assembly on BlackRock for the second annual. And I want to invite everybody in this moment to just introduce your name in the chat, your pronouns, and where you are calling from. So just take a moment to, we have 253 people here today. And I want to make sure that we really get to see all of the beautiful people that are calling in from all over the world. Nice. We got people from Boston, Toronto, Miami, New York, North Carolina, California, Florida, Oregon, Canada, Castro Valley, DC, Texas, Italy, Baltimore, wow. Minnesota, Brazil, France, Hawaii, Pennsylvania. Wow, this is amazing. Minneapolis, the ancestral home of the Lenape, folks from Tongvaland, Ohlone territory, Bosnia. So just give it up for everybody who's here. This is very beautiful and very very exciting. So today, while you continue to just look at all the beautiful people who have taken time out of their day to be here doing this amazing work together, I just want to run us through our program really quickly. We have a 90-minute program planned for you all with amazing, incredible speakers from all over the world who are going to be joining us in person and through video. We are going to have a break at around 45 minutes, so hopefully at the top of the hour. So if you need to take a break, know that we will be having some time where you can get up, drink water, and this will also be recorded. So if you have to get up at any point, feel free to just take care of yourself and know that this is going to be recorded, so you're not going to miss out. You get to take care of yourself and see this. We also have two really amazing, exciting actions that our homies are gonna be leading us through. So yeah, get excited. And then we'll also be having Q&A for our speakers. We have about 15 speakers today. But before we get started, yeah, I wanna, you know, take a moment because I know that we're all here doing this work to, you know, for future generations and to stop the climate chaos. But I also know there's a lot of things happening in the world right now. There's you know, everything that's happening in Palestine and Colombia. So I know that many of our hearts are heavy for the state of the world right now. And I just want to open up with a prayer. And I invite you in whatever way that you pray, or whoever you connect to, your ancestors or spirit beings, or whatever books or authors or science that gives you strength. I invite you to join me in taking a couple of breaths together. If it serves you, I invite you to close your eyes and just connect for a moment with your heart. I know there's so many beautiful hearts here today that care about future generations, that care about the water, that care about the land. And so I just want to ask the creator and ask you to connect with whoever it is you connect to. I offer this humbly, to ask our ancestors and the more than human world to be with us, to give us the strength that we need to do this very important work for future generations. I want to ask the creator to look after our little children, our little ones in our families and in our communities, who we do this work for. I don't know who you do this work for, but I know as an aspiring grandmother, I'm thinking about all the children, all the grandchildren that I would one day love to share this earth with. So asking the ancestors to be with us here, to hold our hearts, to put down whatever grief we're holding just for a moment, as we feel our collective power and our unity for that is rooted in our love for humanity, and that is rooted in our love for Mother Earth, and in our love for the water, in our love for the land, and in our love for each other. And I just ask that we can do this work in a good way, because we know it's going to take all of us. It's going to take people from all corners of the world to heal the planet. And I just invite us to take one collective breath together and exhale, and send all that good love, good energy to all the places in the world right now that are suffering and that are experiencing all kinds of trouble. So yeah, thanks for being here today. I get to now invite my friend Gaurav, who's gonna help us get in a conversation about why we are here and how a lot of the pain and suffering that our communities who are fighting for racial justice, who are fighting for climate justice and migrant justice and all these justices, how we are connected in this moment, gathered here to talk about how we're going to take action and push one of the biggest investors in the world to take some serious action. So Gaurav, there's so much that is happening all the time, for the climate justice movement. We've been asked to pressure and divest from Wells Fargo and Citibank and Chase. And it's like, why now? Why is it important for us to pressure BlackRock?
Yeah, so thank you for that, Neria. And here we are, the second annual People's Assembly. Why BlackRock? For those of you who don't know, BlackRock is the world's largest investor on the planet with $9 trillion of assets under management. That is trillion with a T. So BlackRock has the opportunity to use its outsized power and influence for the protection of our people and the planet. Instead, BlackRock is still pouring billions of dollars into fossil fuels and deforestation-linked commodities that are driving climate chaos and human rights violations around the world. What does this mean? It means they're funding coal power plants responsible for increased carbon emissions, oil pipelines that are cutting through indigenous people's lands, and industrial agricultural plantations that are responsible for deforestation and unprecedented species loss. I want to just connect this to some of the work that I've done. I used to live in and work in Liberia in West Africa. And in Liberia, there's a company called Golden Verolium that is tied to BlackRock's investments. This company came in took over communities' lands and turned what was once dense forests into monoculture palm plantations. In the process, they destroyed the community's sacred sites and razed the forests that were the basis of these communities' livelihoods. When the communities resisted, which anyone is going to do when their home is taken from them, they were met with repression and continued empty promises. So this is just one example, but from West Africa to Indonesia to the Amazon, BlackRock is financing deadly and destructive industries. And I think we have a video now here that explains a little bit more exactly what type of company BlackRock is.
Last year, BlackRock CEO Larry Fink finally acknowledged
climate change is real. Fossil fuels will not be a good investment. Coal is not a good investment.
BlackRock started 2020 by dumping a fraction of its investments in coal. But by the end of the year, BlackRock had increased its holdings in companies that are expanding coal.
We're not saying if you're in hydrocarbons, get out of it.
BlackRock is also the biggest investor in 12 of the most devastating fossil fuel expansion projects. If that money isn't cut off, these carbon bombs will blow our chances for a livable world. BlackRock invests billions in tar sand companies responsible for more gigatons of carbon and the violation of indigenous rights. Despite all the talk,
Climate change, climate change, climate change.
BlackRock is still a massive driver of the climate crisis. We need bold climate action from BlackRock that cuts global emissions and centers climate justice. Tell BlackRock, step up and lead before it's too late.
Wow. I mean, that is just absurd. How much money do they actually manage?
BlackRock manages $9 trillion, so 9 with the T, or sorry, trillion with the T.
Right, and we were just, so for folks who don't know, we did this research last week, and $9 trillion is almost half of the United States' GDP. That's a lot of money. So Guru, why now? Why does it, why today? Why are we here today, gathered to talk about how we're going to pressure BlackRock together?
Sure. So today actually marks exactly 1 week out from BlackRock's annual general meeting, when the CEO, Larry Fink, who you just saw in that video, and BlackRock's board is going to get together and try and make decisions for the company's future. It's time for us now, 1 week out, to turn up the pressure on this company. And what we are trying to do, I mean, let's be real, is no small feat. We are trying to move giants, Wall Street giants at that. And the reality is, we are. A few years ago, no one knew who BlackRock was. And now this company is the target of youth climate strikes to indigenous peoples' movements all around the world. And they're feeling the pressure. They are being forced to reckon with their investment model. Nowadays, BlackRock talks a big game on climate. They say they want to center climate in their investment strategy. And just in January, they said that their goal is to achieve net zero emissions by 2030. But despite these rhetorical commitments, today, BlackRock remains one of the largest investors in the planet in fossil fuels and deforestation-linked commodities. The reality is their action is not matching their rhetoric, let alone matching the scale of the crisis we are all collectively facing. So while BlackRock paints itself as a climate-conscious investor, it has done very little to understand the human rights impacts of its investments.
Wow, I mean, that is wild. I read your article that you wrote that absolutely blew me away in seeing how this investor that is the biggest investor in Wall Street actually puts money into the detention centers that is impacting like my people. It puts money into all of the crops that are creating incentives for people to burn down the forest, and it also puts money in the pipelines. So it's absurd that this one investor is doing all of this work. And we know that results in massive amounts of human rights violations. And I was thinking about how in COP25 in Madrid, Spain, there was 300 of us from the global climate justice movement that were corralled. We were met with massive police like violence. We were corralled and pushed out for basically just asking and demanding the global leaders to keep like one clause of human rights language in the Paris Accord, and we're not even talking about indigenous rights. We're not even talking about the rights of nature. Like, we're still fighting for human rights language in the Paris Accord. Can you tell us a little bit more about why we need to be approaching this from a human rights angle?
Sure. I mean, I think you hit it spot on, is that we cannot separate the environmental impacts from the human rights impacts of the climate crisis. Intensified natural disasters, rising sea levels, increasing and worsening air and water pollution, changing weather patterns. These things disproportionately impact marginalized communities and marginalized communities of color. Companies that BlackRock is financing, they're not just responsible for environmental destruction and pollution, but also an epidemic of violence against local communities and land defenders. Just last year, there was a study that found 4 land defenders are killed every single week for defending their traditional lands from being taken over by extractive industries. But like you pointed out, that's not the only reason we need investors like BlackRock to center a human rights approach. The very same investors that are financing the companies driving the climate crisis are also funneling billions of dollars into companies that are militarizing our borders, manufacturing the weapons of war, surveilling immigrants, and building private prisons and detention camps. BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, the 3 largest US asset managers, are all invested in companies like Geo Group and Core Civic, companies that are operating private prisons and migrant detention centers where human rights abuses are norms. That means the very same investors that are financing the industries that are fueling climate change, dispossessing people of their land, are then turning around and financing the companies that hunt down people and incarcerate them when they seek out safety. I think as a movement, we need to recognize that our struggles are intertwined, just like our future is. Climate justice is racial justice, is migrant justice. But I know, Niria, that this intersectional approach is important to you and where you come from and the work that you do. So curious to hear how you connect these dots.
Yeah, I mean, this is so deep for me because I know as a climate movement, we've definitely made strides in creating some of those intersections. And I know that a couple years ago, when I was doing more direct humanitarian aid in the US-Mexico border, they were 2 separate things. Migrant justice didn't see how connected it was with climate justice, but and for many reasons. But yeah, I mean, climate justice, climate injustice and climate chaos is pushing out so many of our relatives from the global South who are losing their livelihoods to floods, who are losing their livelihoods to wildfires. And in the US-Mexico border, we're seeing more and more of our indigenous brothers and sisters coming through who sometimes don't even speak Spanish. So like, that's definitely super connected. And I'm glad that we're here together talking about all those issues in one space, because our movements can be very, we're going to talk about racial justice over here and this over there. So yeah, it is absolutely connected. And I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit more about what we can do to what we want BlackRock to do today.
Sure. So what we want, I mean, as a movement, our demand has to be to governments, to companies, to investors, should be to decarbonize and decolonize. So the modern financial system operates on this legacy of colonial domination and extraction of Black, Indigenous, and other communities of color's land and labor. I think it's important to recognize that even today, for so many people, the same struggles for self-determination and control over their lands persist. So what does that mean? What do we want BlackRock to do? Big picture, BlackRock needs to live up to its talk and shift its financing away from fossil fuels and industrial agricultural companies responsible for the environmental destruction, land grabbing, and human rights abuses we are discussing. But today, there are clear steps BlackRock can take to live up to its climate commitments. So after years of pressure for people like the people on this call today, BlackRock adopted a policy on coal. In reality, this policy excludes only a fraction of its coal holdings from its portfolio. So one thing BlackRock can do is expand its exclusion of coal and extend it to other destructive fossil fuels such as tar sands, Amazon oil, and Arctic oil. Number two, BlackRock, along with every other major investor, has no policy in place to address its investments in deforestation, land grabbing, or the human rights abuses we were just discussing. Industrial agricultural commodities such as palm oil, soy, and cattle are responsible for destroying the world's last standing forests, as we see every year in horror as the Amazon rainforest burns.
Absolutely.
Adopt policies and practices that prevent deforestation and respect the rights of Indigenous peoples and local communities. And lastly, when it comes to BlackRock's latest pledge to achieve net zero emissions, there are real concerns that without a clear commitment to reducing overall emissions, net zero is going to be just another greenwashing exercise. That's why BlackRock should release its near-term goals to reach net zero without relying on false climate solutions, including carbon offsets, which are linked to deforestation and violations of the rights of Indigenous peoples. You know, making pledges for 2030 won't add up to much if action isn't taken today.
Yeah, that's funny you say that, because it's like, I saw this meme the other day about how like, you can't make a pledge for 2050 if you never met the 2030 goals, which I think is super important. And I also want to give a shout out to any folks who are here from BlackRock. We see you, we know you're here. We're super grateful that you got 300 brilliant people on this call that are going to give you a lot of ideas of where you can put those $9 trillion. I mean, $9 trillion is a lot of money. Like I said, it's almost half of the United States' GDP. And I just want to, maybe turn to you all 297 amazing people that are joining us here today. I want to invite you to type in the chat. And if you're here from BlackRock, please pull out your notebooks and your pens and take some notes, because we're going to give you a lot of brilliant ideas of where you can actually put that money. So to the wonderful people that are here, the question is, what are some climate solutions that BlackRock can invest in to heal our Mother Earth? So just, if someone can type that in the chat, I'm going to repeat that again. What are some real climate solutions that BlackRock can invest in to heal our Mother Earth? And we're just going to give it a moment. I'll just name my climate solution. I'm really, my hometown burned down in wildfires in September. And so BlackRock, if you want to give us some money to create resident-owned communities that source their energy from renewable energies, feel free to do that. I'm also seeing in the chat, if we can look at the chat, people are putting so many amazing ideas. Let's see. Clean up toxic fossil fuels, permaculture education, alternative energy, agroecology, regenerative agriculture, plastic alternatives, circular economies, community-owned renewables. Whoa. Transition communities to rooftop solar. There is so many ideas. Please keep them coming in the chat. And without, I just want to thank you, Gaurav. If you want to share anything else, you good? All right, everybody, give a big round of applause to our friend Gaurav from Friends of the Earth for blessing us with that awesome framing. And now, without further ado, I want to introduce one of our amazing speakers, Jackie Fielder, who is here from Stop the Money Pipeline. Thank you, Jackie, for being with us today. Jackie's a Hidatsa Lakota Communications and Digital Coordinator with Stop the Money Pipeline. Jackie has previously worked with Mazaska Talks and organizing Divest the Globe in 2017, a major international day of action targeting banks funding fossil fuels. In the Bay Area, Jackie helped was the founder to the SF Defund DAPL Coalition. And you recently also ran for state senate, which was super inspiring to see. So thank you for being with us. And without further ado, please bless us with your wisdom.
Thank you, Nuria, for emceeing this huge event. Thanks everyone for participating in on a weekday. It's really important that you're here. A little bit about me and just why I'm called to this particular fight with finance is, my grandmother was born and raised on the Fort Berthold Reservation, which is in Northwest North Dakota, and it is home to the 3 affiliated tribes of which I'm a citizen. This particular reservation, like many others in the Midwest, experienced the trauma of displacement when the US government decided to construct a series of dams in the 1930s or 40s. And so environmental justice is, and really racial justice is hugely, it's a hallmark of the Indigenous experience and also the experience of many communities of color. So when we talk about the actual devastation, not just to our climate, but to people, it's really real. It manifests itself in intergenerational trauma, in a divorcing of peoples from their ways of knowing how to live, how to thrive, from their relationships to land. And so that is why I think that this work is particularly important, and especially in centering Indigenous voices in the work when we talk about bringing banks and institutional investors to respond for their gigantic powers of directing capital to or away from companies that really devastate our communities. And I also want to draw attention to, of course, the Dakota Access Pipeline, which happens to start at the reservation where my grandmother grew up. Long story short, you all probably know the story of the Dakota Access Pipeline. It was built without the consent of many Lakota tribes, Standing Rock Nation being the primary opponent to this pipeline. And it is currently operating illegally. Oil is flowing. There are people who have literally moved away from the Standing Rock Reservation to other reservations, other towns, because they are afraid that this pipeline will, in fact, break and devastate, destroy their only source of fresh water. And so this is a problem not unique to the Standing Rock Indian Reservation, and definitely not unique to the Plains, but also we're seeing a pipeline trying to be constructed in Anishinaabe territory. This is the Line 3 tar sands pipeline. And if built, it would destroy the sacred wild rice beds that the Anishinaabe people depend on for their food, culture, and way of life. And so it is really important that we all show up to demand that institutions like BlackRock stop investing in corporations like Enbridge, like Energy Transfer that built the Dakota Access Pipeline, and like so many other fossil fuel companies that profit and exploit the precarious and really oppressed position that Black, Indigenous, and other communities of color find themselves in the US and also the larger global system of power. So thank you all for being here. Please continue to advocate that BlackRock and its massive capital flows are directed into our future, into the safety and well-being of our planet and our people and our water and our land. And thank you all for being here.
Oh, thank you so much, Jackie, for joining us. It's gonna take all of us from all corners of the earth. So next, speaking of all corners of the earth, we're gonna watch a video montage of international frontline voices. And we're just gonna hear from people that are all over the world who have come together to ask that BlackRock divest from oil extraction, and that it take its money out of the palm oil and soy plantations around the world that are devastating indigenous communities and local communities.
I'm from Kalimantan, West Borneo, Indonesia. Palm oil company Kartika Prima Cipta has taken over land belongs to indigenous peoples of Dayak and Malay communities in Kapuas Hulu District, West Kalimantan. Has destroyed their forests, peatland and polluted rivers and lake.
BlackRock has funded this company and is therefore responsible for this action.
BlackRock's investment is causing social, environmental, and gender impacts on communities, on indigenous peoples.
Os ataques aos direitos dos povos indígenas, bem como as invasões e demais atividades ilegais nas terras indígenas, aumentaram sobremaneira. Estamos chegando a um ponto de não retorno, onde a nossa casa, o nosso lar, as nossas terras indígenas estão sendo destruídas.
BlackRock financial model operates on a legacy of colonial dominance, extraction and exploitation of indigenous lands and other traditional people resources.
We are seeing criminalization of environmental human rights defenders. We are seeing aggravated land grabbing, militarization of community territories, eviction and dislocation.
There is no way for BlackRock to address the climate impacts of its investments without respecting the rights of indigenous peoples and local communities.
BlackRock must stop financial companies from destroying our forests, stealing our land, and poisoning our water. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now I'm gonna invite us to transition right into the next video, which is 81 indigenous and frontline leaders sent an open letter to BlackRock in March of this year, demanding that it respect the rights of indigenous peoples and local communities, and that it just halt their support for the companies and industries that are driving deforestation, land grabbing, and human rights abuses. So without further ado, we're going to hear from some of the leaders who were a part of this letter.
BlackRock. Climate change is not simply a risk to be calculated in terms of profit margins. It is a constant stream of risk to our people and our planet.
Mientras BlackRock se comprometió a pedir a las empresas que reduzcan las emisiones en el futuro, nuestros bosques están siendo destruidos, nuestras tierras están siendo robadas y nuestra gente está siendo asesinada.
Krisis yang terjadi saat ini adalah hasil dari rasisme eksploitasi dan penjajahan selama berabad-abad.
tidak ada cara untuk mengatasi dampak perubahan iklim dari investasimu. Tanpa menghargai hak-hak masyarakat adat dan komunitas lokal. Sains telah membuktikan bahwa mendukung hak teritorial kita menjaga tegakkan hutan.
Así que por favor, díganos, ¿qué medidas van a tomar para que sus inversiones dejen de violar los derechos de los pueblos indígenas y atacar a nuestras comunidades? El mundo está mirando.
Thank you. Thank you. So, these are our relatives all over the world. We heard from people in the Amazon and Indonesia and Central America. I know some of these people personally, so I'm personally very moved. And because they're real people and we will at some point run into them, I want to invite us to, we saw Norman, Dimas, Rita, Eloy, we saw Michael, Leo, Nilu, Hemzi, and Sara. And I want to invite us to imagine that we are holding a bowl with our hands. And in this very moment, all 300 of us, let's visualize collectively putting love and strength and protection and courage into this bowl that is in our hands. And whatever else you want to send these beautiful relatives in this moment who are standing up to defend our Mother Earth and defend their rights as Indigenous people and frontline communities. And when you're ready, once you're done putting all that good energy of love and protection and courage and health and joy and passion, I want to invite you to just push it out into the world and visualize them in the Amazon, in Indonesia, in Panama, all over in Africa, receiving all that good energy from the 300 of us right here, because we are connected and we are standing with them. They are not alone, and they are standing for us, protecting some of the most important parts of Mother Earth. Whew, okay. Thank you, everybody. I can't see you on the other side because this is a webinar, but I trust that you're doing this with me. So thank you. And next, I have the biggest honor, and I'm super fangirl of Rashida Tlaib, who made world history as one of the first Muslim women to Congress, the first Palestinian woman elected to Congress, who has joined us today and is going to just share with us a little bit about, climate justice, accountability, and community rights. So thanks so much for being with us, Rashida.
Oh, thank you so much, sis. And thank you all so much for sharing this space with me and allowing me to share this space with all of you. Salams to all of you, peace. I'm so incredibly appreciative of all of the work that you all continue to do. This is a massive effort against, corporate greed and such a big powerhouse of a company. But I hope you know this, that they may have the money, but man, do we have the people. And that's something that is incredible, just not replaceable. So just thank you all. So let's talk about BlackRock, the world's largest investor, and how we can all hold them accountable. You all know the climate crisis is here and we don't have any more time to waste. Even BlackRock has acknowledged that, quote, sustainability risk and particularly climate risk is an investment risk. Of course, they have to look at it in that way instead of a human risk. But in BlackRock's own 2021 global principles, BlackRock says that they expect the companies they invest in to articulate how they will reach net zero emissions and limit global warming. But you all know BlackRock's voting record doesn't match their slick press releases. In 2020, BlackRock joined the Climate Action 100 Plus, a group of investors committed to meeting the climate goals of the Paris Agreement. Despite joining the group, BlackRock voted, I think, a dismal 11% of their climate resolutions in 2020. That's well behind other major assets managers and was the second worst among all of the memberships. As the world's largest asset manager, BlackRock has an unmatched amount of leverage to help accelerate our path to green energy, net zero economy. Instead, they're sitting on the sidelines. BlackRock's emission targets are net zero by 2050. The climate crisis is already here, as you all know, and we can't wait any longer. Even putting aside the endless environmental and human rights reasons to take bold, immediate action, there's also an obvious business case for investors like BlackRock stepping up. And it's unfortunate that, again, the human cost is not enough for them to do better and to do more. Even if we manage to limit warming to 2 degrees Celsius, publicly traded companies will still face an estimated $3 trillion, y'all, in climate-related losses over the next 15 years. If we delay acting on climate, the losses get much worse. The losses due to stranded assets are estimated at $20 trillion. The price of BlackRock's failure on climate is not just an environmental catastrophe, but an economic one. We know that BlackRock and its CEO, Larry Fink, like to hide their dirty investments to shield themselves from accountability. But even BlackRock's so-called passive investments are based on choices made by fund managers. The choice to invest in fossil fuel companies like Marathon Petroleum, right in my district, that have fought to dismantle fuel efficiency standards tooth and nail and pollute communities in my hometown and across the country with toxic emissions. The choice to invest in companies that directly contribute to destruction of our rainforest in the Amazon and Indonesia and who directly violate indigenous rights. The choice to use a loophole in their own policy to retain hold of more than 85 billion in coal shares, despite BlackRock's own pledge to divest from coal, our dirtiest energy source. So I just, if BlackRock won't take aggressive action to pressure or divest from dirty polluters that they currently invest in, the BlackRock shareholders need to stand up. We need to hold them accountable and say enough is enough. BlackRock wouldn't have acknowledged climate risk and the urgent need to decarbonize if it weren't for the public pressure for you, the movement, and the scrutiny you've all brought to the investors and their actions. So thank you for that on behalf of my residents at home. Now we need to hold them to their word and specifically use those words, push it back on them. Climate principles are worthless without action. So we need to be concrete and really move with a sense of urgency. Our planet depends on all of us to not only defend her, but all the people that reside in it. And you all know that that's us. And so I just thank you so much again for allowing me to share this space. And thank you for continuing to push back, even when it seems almost impossible. I just want you to know I'm here in Congress, and every day I see that your work is making a tremendous difference. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sis, for being with us. We know that you have such a packed schedule, so thanks for coming and blessing us with your presence. You've been so inspirational to so many of us, seeing you just pushing for change from that level. And just from my people to your people, just praying for you and standing in solidarity in this moment in the midst of everything that's going on. So blessings, thank you. And now we are going to transition into our first action. And I want to invite my homie, Daniel Jubileer, who's shared who we've been doing direct action since we were way younger than we are now, to just lead us through what we're going to do as our first action. And while he does that, once he's done, we're going to, Lou Ayef and the Peace Poets, my better half is going to be leading us through some songs. If you've been out on the streets pressuring BlackRock, please sing along. These are probably some of the same songs that you've already heard. So without further ado, Daniel, lead us through this action.
Cool. Thank you so much, Neria. Wow, I am so inspired and moved by all our speakers so far. Thank you, Representative Talib, all the frontline Indigenous leaders and speakers. My name is Daniel Jubileer, and I'm an organizer with the BlackRock's Big Problem campaign, coming to you from Chochenyo Ohlone land here in Berkeley, California. So we've heard a bit about the problems so far. We're going to continue to hear about the problems, but we're also here to take action. We are going to take direct action together, and we know that collective action can move finance giants like BlackRock and get them to change. We have the power to win a world that works for everyone, where everybody has clean water to drink, clean air to breathe, where children can play safely in their communities, and a world where human rights and Indigenous sovereignty are respected. So drop in the chat if you are ready to take some direct action right now together on BlackRock.
Yes, we're ready. Woo!
So one of the most effective ways that we can pressure BlackRock is to target their public image. BlackRock obsesses over their brand, right? They portray themselves as a sustainable, progressive company that cares about climate change and human rights. Their brand image is part of how they attract clients and retain customers and make money. So we are going to be pressuring BlackRock a few different ways throughout the call to target their public image, to really shine a light on their hypocrisy. And the first way we're going to do that is by leaving a negative or a truthful Google review on their New York City world headquarters. So here's how this is going to work. You can go ahead and open up the follow along doc, which will look like this, and go to Digital Action 1. Leave a Google review for BlackRock. So anytime a top client or an executive or a staff puts in their headquarters to go there, now they're going to see this review. So we're going to flood their page with 1-star reviews with some of these sample comments. So you'll click this link here that's going to take you to their Google Maps headquarters, and you'll see it says 43 reviews, 3.7 stars. We're going to take that stars down a little bit and flood them with some reviews. So go ahead and click 43 reviews and click Write a Review. And from here, you can click 1 star and write your message. This can be something that's from your own heart. You're also welcome to use some of our sample comments. I'm gonna just copy and paste this one just to make it easy. You can even add an image if you want. Here, I'll add a little image of a wildfire to underscore the point. This message says, BlackRock is driving climate destruction by investing in fossil fuels and deforestation, which harm Indigenous communities around the world. Tiny steps are not enough to meet the urgency of this climate crisis. 1 star. And you can click post, and that review will be sent in. So go ahead and take a moment right now to go ahead and post your review. And Neria, I'm going to give one more instruction before the music.
Sounds good. You know, the lyrics might even be a part of the review. Just for those of you, in case you're having a hard time coming up with a truthful review.
Amazing. Yeah, actually, if you all want to go ahead and do the song now, that's great. And then I'm going to share one more thing at the end. And drop a done in the chat once you've left your review so we know you're done.
Peace, family. Just like we're in the streets right now, my partner and I really believe in the power of music to connect us in action. So while you're doing that action, we're gonna go ahead and get this chant started. Sometimes we carry a lot of rage, and so this one we're gonna really let it out. We're gonna say the words, BlackRock, BlackRock, how much do you earn for murdering our children as the forests burn? And so we're really thinking about that today, letting it come through into this chant. And yeah, whatever room you in right now, fill it up with some music. Chant with us. Here we go.
All right.
We said, BlackRock, BlackRock, how much do you earn for murdering our children while the forests burn? We said, BlackRock, BlackRock, how much do you earn for murdering our children while the forest burns? Come on. BlackRock, BlackRock, how much do you earn
for murdering our children while the forest burns.
Come on now.
BlackRock, how much do you earn for murdering our children while the forest burns?
Sing it out, say
BlackRock, how much do you earn for murdering our children as the forest
do that
burns?
2 more times, say
BlackRock, how much do you earn for murdering our children while the forest
Do it
burns?
1 more time, say
BlackRock, how much do you earn? We want to know.
For murdering our children as the forest burns.
All right, so next time y'all are in the street,
Thanks.
sing that song, get people to sing it with you, because we want to know, BlackRock, if you hear, how much do you earn for burning the future of our children, of our grandchildren, of your descendants? And we're not here to, you know, share like negative reviews, because we're just telling the truth. We're here truth telling. We're here to hold BlackRock accountable to stopping the massive violations that they are funding. We're honestly trying to help them from committing crimes against their own soul, because there's so many other ways that they can be showing up right now, and we're here to hold them accountable and hold them to higher standards. So please keep filling out your reviews. It was awesome. Thank you, Lou, for singing with us. It was awesome to see everybody putting yeah, it was awesome to see everybody saying that they were done. If you are, you know, having a hard time coming up with a negative review, just put those lyrics in, like, how much do you earn? And then we could drop some facts. So
yeah, thank you so much, everybody. Amazing, and amazing singing. We have already taken down their review down to like 2.5 stars, so keep them coming if you haven't yet. And now that we have started to get their attention, the next way we're going to invite you to take action is to send a direct message to their executives, which you can do super easily. You'll go to where it says, click here to send your email. And we're going to be also sending a direct email to all their top leadership to let them know that grassroots activists are watching them, that we are going to be holding them accountable, and that they know exactly what we're asking for. So once you've left your review, you can go click here to send your email. And this here is an email full of everything that our campaign is demanding BlackRock to do, so that they no longer are perpetuating climate destruction and violating human rights. So y'all probably sent emails before on the internet. It's pretty simple. All you have to do is put in your name, your information. This is going to go to all their top people. And you know, if you want, you can edit this, or you can just use the message that we've written. Maybe you're like me and you want to get emails, maybe you don't, so you can opt in or out right here, up to you, and send your message, and that will go right to those folks. So we're also going to ask you to take a moment right now to go ahead and send this message to them, so that now that we've got their attention, they're listening, we're also giving them really clear demands of what to do. So maybe we'll just take 30 seconds for that, and I'll pass it back to you, Neria, to keep us moving.
Okay. All right. Well, and again, I know 30 seconds is not enough. Some of us, I know I need a little more time to give them a real piece of my mind. So just so you know, if you miss this moment right now, or you're feeling rushed, these links are going to be sent to you in a follow-up email. So it's beautiful that we're all doing it right now. We're storming their inboxes and their reviews, but also know that we're going to send these links to you. Thank you so much, Daniel. And so now we're going to just transition into our break. So y'all can get up, drink some water, take care of yourself. And when we come back, we're gonna hear from more amazing people. We're gonna hear from Brenda from the Union of Concerned Scientists. We're gonna hear from BJ from Indigenous Environmental Network, Donna from Friends of the Earth, Osprey from We Can, and we are gonna hear from Sonia, who's gonna be calling in from the Amazon. So stay tuned, and we'll see you here at about 7 minutes after. Y'all have 5 minutes to just get up and stretch, or stick around and listen to some beautiful music from Lila June. Thank you.
Indigenous people, shine your light, we are equal. I remember the days when our prayers were illegal. I remember the days when being Indian was lethal. Yeah, we had a rough past, but get ready for the sequel. Indigenous people, shine your light, we are equal. I remember the days when our prayers were illegal. I remember the days when being Indian was lethal. Yeah, we had a rough past, but get ready for the sequel. Get ready for the glorious comeback of our people. Oh, yeah. Rise up, all you warriors of love, all you answers to the prayers of our ancestors from above. I can feel it in my heart. Can you feel it in your blood? I can hear the seventh fire calling us to wake up, wake up. All nations rise. Rise up, 'cause now's your time. We don't have to hide anymore, 'cause now's the time. All nations rise, rise up, 'cause now's your time. We don't have to hide anymore, 'cause now's the time. With forgiveness as my bow and my prayers as my arrows, pull them back and let go. I watch them fly like sparrows. Have hope. Yeah, have hope. With compassion as my shield and faith down to my marrow, I will walk the pollen path even when it gets narrow. Yeah, yeah, I resurrect. Yes, you can bet that we seen the single mama raising children on the res. We seen domestic violence tear apart what we have left. We seen the alcohol take it all and leave us dead. We seen the children take their lives when they can't take the dread anymore. It's a war. Can't take the dread anymore. It's a war. No, we can't take the dread anymore. It's a war. No, we can't take the dread anymore. It's a war, but we've seen it all before. And now we know we can change it, 'cause that's why we were born. We know we are the ones that we have been waiting for. We are the ones Grandma has been praying for. So rise up, all you warriors of love, all you answers to the prayers of our ancestors from above. I can feel it in my heart. Can you feel it in your blood? I can hear the seventh fire calling us to wake up, wake up. Pueblo hermoso, levántense, es nuestro tiempo. No tienes que esconderte más. Ahora es nuestro tiempo. Mujer indígena, tú eres tan sagrada. Traigas medicina de tu suelo todavía. A pesar del abuso de tu cuerpo y tu tierra, respetamos tus ancestros y la suya cultura. Hombre indígena, tú eres honorable y yo veo la fuerza que todavía sobrevive. A pesar del abuso de tu raza venerable, yo respeto tus ritos, tus danzas, tus padres. Somos guerreros del amor y guerreros de la paz. Sí, no vamos a escondernos más. Somos guerreros del amor y guerreros de la paz. Sí, no vamos a escondernos más.
They say that history is written by the victors. But how can there be a victor when the war isn't over? The battle has only just begun, and Creator is sending his very best warriors. And this time, it isn't Indians versus cowboys. No, this time, it is all the beautiful races of humanity together on the same side, and we are fighting to replace our fear with love. And this time, bullets, arrows, and cannonballs won't save us. The only weapons that are useful in this battle are the weapons of truth, faith, and compassion.
Yes, Lila June. Chills all over my body. Thank you, Sister Lila. Yeah, I hope y'all had a great break. And we're gonna move into our net zero is not zero section of this part, because BlackRock wants to commit to net zero and be seen as a climate hero without lifting a finger. And we're not gonna let them get away with that, because we actually have a lot of wise scientists and community leaders who can definitely help them do better. So I have the honor of introducing Brenda from the Union of Concerned Scientists, who's going to bless us with her scientific wisdom. Brenda?
Hello, thank you so much. It's an honor to be here.
It's so nice to have you. Thank you for taking some time to share some of, the science of it, because some of us have the stories being from frontline communities, and we also need the science. We need to be braiding our strategies together. So thank you.
Thank you. And I'm inviting my colleague Ortal Ullman to help as well. So she's blessed her presence here as well.
Thank you, Ortal.
Yeah, thanks for having us, y'all. And again, thanks, Brenda, for joining with your science prowess. And welcome for everyone to the wonky portion of this webinar. We're going to try to communicate some of the science of climate change and what BlackRock is responsible for and what they can do to get us out of this mess. So Brenda, to just start us off, can you share a bit about who you are and why you do the work that you do at the Union of Concerned Scientists?
Sure. And being a scientist, of course, I brought a few slides. So thanks, Ortal. And so basically, the first picture I wanted to share with you was I was invited and had the privilege to go to the Arctic to conduct my research early in my career. And I expected to see something more like this picture of the early explorers in the Arctic. Really ice-choked region and very dangerous kind of conditions. So next slide, you can show that so everyone else can see that. That's what I expected to see. However, next slide. During my first research expedition, I had this rare opportunity on one of the rare clear days to take this photo from a helicopter. And you can see our little ship there is going, we're about a day from the North Pole, and we had vast areas of open water in September. I knew then something was wrong when I experienced a nearly ice-free North Pole region. And really, I have to say from that point, I got it viscerally, and ever since I've been committed to studying climate impacts and to communicate beyond scientific papers and tell everyone about the consequences and how it affects their daily lives. So the next slide. One of the things is, Ortal, you are going to lead us into this next session.
Yeah, well, I know that you've been at the forefront of attribution science, which is basically the science of being able to attribute emissions and climate impacts to atmospheric carbon dioxide, and specifically in the work that you do to fossil fuel companies and the fossil fuel industry. So I wanted to ask, what are some of the most striking findings from your work in that realm?
Sure, thanks. What we can tell with this slide about cement, gas, oil, and coal is that with source attribution, we can look at their annual emissions from the largest carbon producers. And the next slide as well, we can see that Rick Heady is a forefront of attribution research because he looked at company reports. And from 1854 to the present, he has looked at emissions that are tied to the extraction, as well as when you sell that product. So for example, with fossil fuels, and you sell it for combustion for energy, we know that there's a lot of methane and carbon dioxide that's released. And with cement in the manufacturing stage, there's also carbon dioxide release. So since we have these annual data from 1854 to the present, we were able to put this into some simple climate models and come up with some surprising results. Next slide. We found that roughly 61% of the atmospheric carbon dioxide rise from 1880 to 2015 was traced to just 88 of the largest carbon producers. And this directly relates to financing of these companies. So the next slide. Using our models, we can also turn off these emissions traced back to fossil fuel companies. And we did this from 1965 through 2015, which is that yellow line bar, and as to see what would the world look like if that pollution never occurred. And so by doing this, we learned that most of the harm from these companies has occurred since the 1960s. And science historians tell us from internal industry documents that the 1960s are also the decade that fossil fuel companies really started to understand the harms of their products and what they could cause in the long term. So financing harm is really the subject of today's People's Assembly. So let's take a look at the global climate impacts of BlackRock's support of fossil fuels, which are significant. So let's see, and I'm going to look at the total funding around the world for 88 companies that Rick Heady studied. So we find that emissions from the extraction and the sale of products of these 88 largest fossil fuel producers and cement manufacturers over 1880 to 2015 contributed around half of the global temperature rise. In terms of sea level rise, we find that emissions from the extraction and the sale of the products of the 88 largest fossil fuel producers and cement manufacturers over the historical period contributed around 36% of global sea level rise to date. And we've locked in future sea level rise with those past emissions.
Those numbers are pretty striking, Brenda, to know that such a small handful of companies are responsible for such huge impacts. And as climate activists, and of course, climate activists and scientists like yourself, we know the dangers of climate change, as you're describing. We know that they're already here and that they're multiplying. And it feels like it really underscores the need for BlackRock to move as quickly as possible to stop propping up fossil fuels. So can you give us some hope? If BlackRock acts now, what does the science say we can still save?
Yes, well, we can avoid annual losses in some sectors that are estimated to grow to hundreds of billions of dollars by the end of the century, just in the United States. And lower emissions saves more than just annual costs. If you notice, it's too small a print, but the top two bars have to deal with labor hours and extreme heat mortality. So as the world's largest investor in fossil fuels, BlackRock is also funding direct threats to our lives, and especially the lives of outdoor workers and poor communities having to be outside. And lives will not be cut short if the world reduces emissions. Not as many lives will be cut short. What's more important is those were US numbers and studies. Those damage estimates also extend worldwide. So what's really, really important is that reducing emissions would save lives, especially in Southeast Asia and Southern Europe. You can see with the green bars pointing to the left edge of those graphs that these are, well, you can't see it, but if we were to do the Paris Agreement, we can minimize the lives lost in North America, Southeast Asia, and Southern Europe. But as you move to the right side of those graphs, the highest bars are the higher emissions towards the end of the century. And you can see that Southeast Asia and Southern Europe really have many more lives that could be lost if we do not reduce emissions. So Larry Fink and BlackRock have a responsibility to think about these lives when they make their investment decisions.
It's a pretty stark picture that you and our other panelists have laid out. And we know that fossil fuel companies responsible for this mess aren't shaping up quickly enough. We know that political action isn't moving nearly quickly enough to save us. And so as the funder of so much of this climate destruction, what's one thing that we should expect BlackRock to do?
Essentially, think about the consequences of funding fossil fuel companies that are investor-owned in particular, because these lead to ice loss, sea level rise, extreme heat mortality, killer heat waves, wildfire damage. The list goes on and on. That's all.
So it sounds like maybe our one thing to put forward to BlackRock among the many other suggestions that were running through the chat before was that a simple thing BlackRock could do is to leave fossil fuels behind and really start moving toward clean and renewable energy.
Yes, energy companies are the future, especially non-harming energy supplies.
Well, thank you, Brenda, for helping lay out all of this science. And thanks to everyone for letting us be part of this wonderful webinar.
Thank you so much. Let's give it up for Ortel and Brenda. Yes, I can see some clapping hands. Yeah, Ortel and Brenda are, Brenda's a senior climate scientist for the Union of Concerned Scientists, and Ortel is the senior campaign coordinator. And we could not do our advocacy work without you. You know, these numbers are so important. I'm seeing people in the chat asking where they can access your slides, Brenda. So we're gonna have to figure it out how to get these amazing slides that actually show the graphs of all the people whose lives are literally on the line. You know, the global north, I think the United States, this country accounts for more than a quarter of the greenhouse gas emissions, if I'm not mistaken. Scientists in the room, did I get
We are the largest, the US is the largest historical contributor to global temperature rise.
Exactly. So our friend Larry Fink needs to really make some better choices because fossil fuels is a thing of the past and we need to move beyond that. Well, thank you so much. And now I have the greatest honor to introduce BJ McMenema, who is from Indigenous Environmental Network. BJ has worked with IEN for the past 17 years in different areas in communication, media, and is mostly focused on doing on-the-ground work with frontline communities for the Keep It in the Ground campaign. There's a song that I'm trying to remember that we wrote for that, but BJ also contributes to IAN's campaigns in opposing the genetic engineering, techno fixes, and other threats of false solutions to climate change. And BJ is just amazing and is an incredible grandma who does this for the love of her grandchildren. So shouts out to all the grandmas on this call right now. We love you and super grateful for the grandmas that are still in this struggle. So take it away, BJ.
Okay, finally, I got my mute back on. A little technically challenged anyway. So yeah, thank you. You guys are rocking it, and I'm gonna try to do my very best to keep it down. But you know, I don't know. It was just knowing all of this stuff and hearing it again today. It's just like, yeah, we gotta move. So anyway, I just want to say good afternoon, relatives. Thank you for joining us today on a weekday and into the you know, the closing bell, if you will. I'm just thankful you joined us and from wherever you are, wherever you call home. The presentations today from our comrades and defenders and good hearts are helping all of us understand and identify those who are scheming and carrying out plans that aren't going to bring us meaningful positive solutions to the challenges we're facing. No, quite the opposite, because they're taking advantage to profit in the schemes and scams that Mr. Fink or Gates or Musk and others will result in more misery and death and disease by means of deception and to further consolidate their power and control over our lives and all life as we know it. Next slide, please. We identify these people that I just mentioned as disaster capitalists, of which, unfortunately, BlackRock is not the only bad actor. And they all reflect a profound inability to imagine a world in which our communities can live well and prosper within the vital natural cycles of life upon which we all depend. So as I was preparing this presentation and reading BlackRock's marketing material, watching billionaires talk about their false solutions, using the terms net zero, nature-based solutions, natural capital, and equating the natural world and humans as having value, but always in regard to profit, money, assets, and value added. Their methods of madness, of unproven techno fixes, geoengineering, genetic modification, biotech, carbon capture and storage, which are all promoted as negative or neutral CO2, right? Along with offsets, credits, taxes, and then we add marketing into their mix. It's all smoke and mirrors, promoting with government and private investments, mega industrial extreme energy, wind, solar, hydro, and others that will further their control of our lives and our livelihoods. We can clearly see that there is a stark difference between our definition of value and theirs. Next slide, please. So of all the things we do, our educational outreach is probably the most important, helping people to recognize the dangerous and damaging proposals of false promises that maintain and expand the systems and industries that have brought us to this do right or die crossroads in human history. We must all engage in a reawakening and strengthen our solidarity with each other. We can no longer act on the denial that there is a separation in relationships between humans and all life on Mother and within Mother Earth. We must act with respect based on our original instructions for the sake of our next 7 generations. This is our home and our only home, and we're not going to be exploited or commodified. Next slide, please. So one of the fundamental facts we all need to remember is that CO2 emitted from burning fossil fuels and CO2 originating on land are different. And even though these are not being distinguished as such, they are fundamentally different. Yet, despite the differences, a whole host of unproven and unquantifiable emissions and trading mechanisms are emerging that would provide a platform for the commercialization of currently traded traditional forest-based offsets and add land sector-based carbon offsets into soils, agriculture, and methane from landfills and factory farms. Next slide, please. So carbon markets was the term we used to describe the various schemes and scams. But in an effort to boost the failing carbon markets around 2013, the extractive industry and organizations promoting had to rebrand, to make all this sound like something different or better. So now carbon pricing is being used as the overarching term for carbon trading, offsets, taxes, and REDD+, and other conservation-based false solutions as they embed all these into a global framework. The Paris Agreement further solidified this goal by outlining mechanisms for countries to meet emission reduction commitments through linking regional carbon trading systems and other carbon pricing approaches. Next slide, please. The truth is that none of these reduce emissions or reduce extraction and use of fossil fuels. And emissions aren't reduced at the source. So peoples of color and economically challenged communities continue to suffer not only CO2 pollution, but a long list of toxic chemicals that are destroying their health and the biodiversity within these areas. But another reality, not so good for them, needs some magic book work, but anyway, is that carbon markets remain unstable with low prices, with results in few, if any, economic incentives for polluters to reduce emissions at the source. To further complicate all these markets, They are rife with complicated reporting, compliance rules, and profit-driven private companies like BlackRock and some conservation organizations promote and sell offsets to consumers, polluters, airlines, and other corporations. It's just another illusion that in reality do nothing but make money for the investment markets. Next slide, please. Carbon pricing schemes at their very core are unjust colonial oppression of a capitalist, patriarchal, and racist system. And it's pure folly to believe that the same system that has brought us to this point in time will provide a just transition of equity, peace, and prosperity for all life. Carbon pricing is exploitive as these mechanisms restrict land sovereignty and rights of indigenous peoples, as well as land access for peoples of color and low-income communities. For indigenous and forest peoples in the global south, REDD+ projects tend to follow a divide and rule strategy with restrictions on their land and their activities. They have to comply with complicated accounting systems, and most often they are violently evicted from their lands and sometimes even get criminal charges and jail for using their land and resources. The money promised to them isn't paid, furthering their spiral into poverty. And most often the people aren't told that their sacrifices are so corporations in the global north can continue to flourish. Next slide, please. These are nature-based scams, and they're sold as nature-based solutions, which are payments for industrial agriculture and livestock practices that supposedly enhance soil carbon sequestration, reduce emissions, and or enhance biodiversity. These programs can be sold as carbon offsets in a carbon trading system or as tax breaks in a carbon tax system. What's really happening on the ground, no pun intended, is BlackRock, Royal Dutch Shell, and others are investing in land, meaning land grabs. They're also investing in genetic engineering research, which is an attempt to control seed diversity by giving rights and patents to transnational corporations and others whose irresponsible and deadly practices have reduced biodiversity, increased use of petrochemical-derived fertilizers, herbicides, and pesticides, all of which has led to the emergence of superweeds, nitrogen overload in water sources, etc., which puts the survival of all life as we know it in jeopardy. Next slide, please. Carbon capture is the basis of the myth that carbon dioxide can be sucked out of polluting smokestacks or directly from the air and stored, which is being touted as a magic bullet solution to the climate crisis. Carbon capture and storage sequestration, CCS, is being used as a technology to capture CO2 emissions from national gas facilities, fertilizer plants, ethanol refineries, and coal-fired power plants. Remember clean coal? It's compressed into a liquid and transported to be stored in underground geologic formations and piped wherever it's going to be used or stored. But it's also being used, this is ironic, in fracking to inject with the other fluids and so they can extract more oil and gas. Seems kind of counterproductive. Next slide, please. In closing, this was super simplified and totally incomplete examination of carbon pricing and the false solutions. I could spend a few more hours, but for now, I encourage you all to arm yourself with the facts by reading Hoodwinked in the Hothouse at the link provided, climatefalsesolutions.org. Thank you for your time you're spending with us today. And I and members of my IAN family are accessible by email. You can find us on social media or at our website, ienearth.org. I hope you and your loved ones are and remain well and safe on our path toward a just transition.
Oh, thank you so much, BJ. Let's give a round of applause to BJ. And I wanna flag, yeah, let's give her a round of applause. I know that it's a lot of information. I'm seeing in the chat, you wanna see BJ slides too. We're gonna get this to you. Hopefully BJ can give those to us. I also wanna flag it's 2:30, so if you do have to leave, no worries, this is being recorded, but we still have like 4 more incredible speakers, so please stick around. Without further ado, we have Donna Chevis, who's a senior fossil fuels campaigner at Friends of the Earth, who's an incredible elder from the Lumbee tribe and has done a lot of work in the environmental justice movement for decades. We're so honored to have you with us here, Donna, and just blessing us with your wisdom.
Well, thank you so much. I must say that I have learned a lot today, and I believe that everyone who has been or in the audience has wisdom to carry forth away from here, and they have wisdom they brought with them. So thank you so much. I am coming today from Pembroke, the ancestral home of my people, the Lumbee. But I know we are tight on time now, so I'm going to try not to speak extemporaneously so much. But let me get started by directly saying that biomass, as proclaimed to be a greener, renewable energy source, is totally false. And any investment made to support that false solution is wrong. Why should I care about BlackRock and its investments that include Duke and Dominion Energy corporations? Well, I'm going to bring you a personal story today because I live in a location that is heavily impacted by these false solutions that you just heard about and some that will be coming forward later. Predominantly wood pellets and factory farm methane gas. Robeson County, where my home is situated, is heavily indigenous, Black, Latinx, and low wealth. We are a poster child for environmental racism and injustices, which includes false solutions such as biomass. Wood pellets and factory farm methane gas are means by which utilities tout green energy, when in fact they do more harm. A scheme known as Align RNG, with the RNG standing for renewable natural gas, which we know right in itself is false language, in Sampson County, North Carolina, is in the works by Smithville Farms and Dominion Energy. Now, when the Atlantic Coast Pipeline, which I worked very heavily to in opposition of, but when the Atlantic Coast Pipeline was canceled by Dominion and Duke Energies, they pivoted immediately to fast forward their support of factory farm methane gas. It took them a while to decide that they were losing too much money on the frack gas that would be used through the ACP, but it didn't take them long at all to try to get a replacement for that gas. We also have Active Energy Group, which is the United Kingdom corporation that is attempting to open a facility in Lumberton where there are over 100 toxic sites already identified. With its announcement, the CEO declared that this location would give it access to the, and I put in quotes, heart of US timber.
Donna, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I'm seeing here our interpreter is requesting that if you could speak a little slower so she could do the translation. Thank you. I'm so sorry for interrupting.
No, that's okay. I was trying to speak slower. But I come from a large family. If we don't talk fast, we don't get to talk much. Yeah. So I'll go back and say that I live in a location that is heavily impacted by the false solution of biomass, predominantly wood pellets and factory farm methane gas. Robeson County, North Carolina is heavily indigenous, Black, Latinx, and low wealth. We are a poster child for environmental racism and injustices, which includes the false solutions. Wood pellets and factory farm methane gas are means by which utilities, electric utilities, tout green energy when in fact they do more harm. One scheme known as Align RNG, which as you know stands for renewable natural gas, in Sampson County, North Carolina is in the works by Smithville Farms and Dominion Energy. When the Atlantic Coast Pipeline was canceled by Dominion and Duke, they pivoted immediately to fast forward their support of factory farm methane gas. Dominion went with the swine operations and Duke went with dairy. Also, Active Energy Group, a United Kingdom corporation, is attempting to open a facility in Lumberton where there are over 100 toxic sites already identified. With its announcement, the CEO of AEG declared that this location would give it access to the heart of US timber. That heart is also known as the wood basket of the world. This area in the southeast region of the US supplies most of the wood stock for production of wood pellets. Now let's talk a little bit about the Renewable Fuel Standard, RFS. The EPA could soon qualify electricity from biomass as a source of renewable fuel for electric vehicles. By allowing electricity from biomass to qualify for credits under the RFS will encourage the further expansion of this harmful industry. Now, if you could just imagine Elon Musk getting credits for using biomass to generate energy to charge his electric vehicle stations, that's what we're talking about here. The implications of such a vast expansion of bioenergy would have dire impacts on forest, people, water, and biodiversity, and would worsen climate change. A 2018 report by the Environmental Integrity Project found that 21 wood pellet mills exporting to the European Union emit thousands of tons of particulate matter, fine dust, carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxides, also known as smog, and volatile organic compounds, VOCs, per year, each of which are associated with a range of illnesses from respiratory and heart disease to cancer. Earl C. Ellis, professor of geography and environmental systems at the University of Maryland, and the author of Anthropocene, a very short introduction, said, and here I quote, "The International Energy Agency's net zero emissions scenario and other proposals that advocate for continuing the use of land for bioenergy production, even with a move away from conventional biofuels like corn, ethanol, and palm biodiesel, will inevitably compete with the food needs of a global population of more than 9 billion and the need to conserve and restore land to reverse the current biodiversity crisis. Such proposals are not only unrealistic and unfair to vulnerable populations, they divert responsibility away from the continued abuse of fossil fuels by the developed nations that caused this climate crisis in the first place," end quote. If we do not challenge these false solutions, we will be locked into the production and use of methane gas into an unforeseeable future. Unfortunately, there will never be a shortage of animal waste. Wood pellets is another issue. We can run out of trees. With the mixture of wood pellets and factory farm methane gas currently being considered as an energy source for generating electricity to charge batteries for electric vehicles. Imagine the consequences if this happens. When the frack gas fades, the methane gas coming from animal waste will continue. It would be easy to be fatalistic, but with all of the younger people I have heard today, my heart is full with hope. And I'm glad to be one of the grandmothers here celebrating with all of the younger people at this time. Thank you.
Hey, let's give it up for Donna and all our grandmas that are with us here today. Thank you so much, Donna. And I hope we can share your slides too, because I know we could sit and listen to you for days with all your wisdom. But I have the greatest honor of introducing Osprey Uriel Lake, who's the founder and executive director of Women's Earth and Climate Action Network. Osprey has been such an incredible ally, helping bring Indigenous women, frontline women, straight to the table with investors to negotiate on the projects that are having a direct impact on our bodies as Indigenous women. So please, Osprey, and I know you recently published a 100-page report on how like climate change is directly impacting us as women. So just yeah, feel free to share with us what you got to share with us.
Thank you so much, Nuria, and thank you everyone for being here. This is just an awesome gathering, and just a big shout out to everyone for the incredible work that's going on. Together, we are going to change BlackRock and these institutions. And we have Mother Earth on our side. So when we analyze root causes, it's clear that women experience extractive industries, the climate crisis, and environmental degradation with disproportionate severity, precisely because of patriarchy and the fact that our basic rights continue to be denied in varying forms and intensities all over the world. But it's very important to say that we can't in any manner talk about gender inequality without talking about the inextricable relationship to racism and the additional disproportionate impacts of extraction on Indigenous, African American, Black, and Brown women. So at Weekend, we noticed that there was a gap in analysis of the specific gender and racial impacts concerning this fossil fuel industry and complicit financial institutions like BlackRock. So we recently completed, as was just said, an in-depth report about this vital intersection, and I'm sure that'll be dropped in the chat there for all of you so that you can look at all the analysis on your own time. And the report serves to expose the information gap and to advocate for frontline women. Our research is part of our broader campaign to organize for frontline women to meet with financial institutions for direct engagement about the harms experienced in their bodies and by their communities and by the land. And the report that we just did shows that of the 8 case studies that we identified as some of the most serious in North America, almost all of them included investments from BlackRock. From fracking in Kern County in California, to Line 3 in Minnesota, to Chemical Valley in Texas, to Cancer Alley in Louisiana, all of these regions and projects include BlackRock investments. From fracking fields, chemical plants, fossil fuel refineries, and petrochemical facilities, all of them. The report highlights how women of color and Indigenous women experience disproportionate impacts of fossil fuel-derived pollution through their bodies, including higher risks of breast cancer, ovarian cancer, and numerous issues for mothers and their unborn babies. Fossil fuel-derived pollutants have been associated with stillbirth, low birth weight, premature birth, birth defects, and intellectual and physical issues later in life. As an example, a birth study in the Barnett Shale area in Texas found an association between a mother's residential proximity to unconventional natural gas development and preterm birth and fetal death. And African-American, Black, and African diaspora women's pregnancies end in premature birth 50% more often than those of white women. And I just have to say, you know, I'm sharing this with you, but when we did this research, you know, I can't tell you how many days I just wept. I mean, that we actually have all these industries who've caused all the harms you've heard already on the call, and, you know, the incredible violence against land defenders. Just the fact that companies know that they're killing children and babies who haven't even been born is just unconscionable. In the case of Indigenous women along Line 3 pipeline construction in Minnesota, man camps, which are temporary housing sites for pipeline workers, are putting at risk the safety of Indigenous women and girls, as man camps have been extensively linked to the epidemic of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. Already this year, 2 Line 3 pipeline workers in Minnesota were arrested and charged with human trafficking, and specifically solicitation of a minor. So this is not just a concern, this is actually happening. It's also important to say that the harmful gendered and racial impacts of the fossil fuel industry and other extractive industries exist globally. But to manage this extensive amount of information, we really narrowed the scope of our report to North America, meaning, you know, so much more research still needs to be done. And what the report reveals, as does the work of so many of you on this call and activists all over the world, is that we must urgently move away from our extractive predator economy that is based on the exploitation of Indigenous peoples, people of color, women, and the land. And it's just time to end this tragic cycle of investments based on sacrificed peoples, sacrificed zones, and sacrificed zip codes. And we're calling for BlackRock to respect Indigenous and human rights, to adopt and implement Indigenous rights and FPIC policies, especially regarding investments in fossil fuel projects and deforestation projects and forest commodities. So they need to stop harming women, stop environmental racism, and instead invest in community-led solutions and the healthy and just world we seek. We want BlackRock to see themselves as part of real solutions to this critical moment in history and not as part of the problem. So thank you all so much for joining us, taking action, and together we can do this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Osprey. Let's give it up for Osprey for all the beautiful work you and your team does, and this incredible research paper that I can't wait to dive in. But Yeah, I feel you. And I know many of you on this call too. I mean, raise your hand if you had yourself a crying session this week because of all the difficult things that are coming in through our news feed. Yeah, I see a couple hands. Mine was last night. If you haven't had a crying session, I recommend it. Crying is medicine. And like, we need to absolutely let our spirits be shook and our hearts be shattered by these realities so we can just wash our faces and rise up to stand up together. And speaking about standing together, I have the greatest honor. Sonia is here with us. Sonia Guajajara is the executive coordinator of the Association of Brazil's Indigenous People, and has been such a leading figure, such a role model for us younger Indigenous women in the fight for Indigenous rights in Brazil. She's from the Guajajara and Trijar people of Arariboya Indigenous land in the state of Maranhão, Brazil. Sonia, bem-vinda, welcome. And if you want to just share with us, se você quer compartilhar algumas coisas com nós, if you'd like to share your wisdom, we are here.
Olá, olá, salve, salve, né? Boa noite, Zané Caruca, Catuarri. Bom, gente, muito obrigada pelo espaço, né? Para mim é incrível a oportunidade de estar aqui com tantas pessoas fortes, né? Com tantas pessoas lutadoras. E eu estou aqui hoje em nome da APIB, Articulação dos Povos Indígenas do Brasil, e também das mulheres indígenas aqui, que está se organizando, se articulando, se fortalecendo cada dia mais, né? São muitos os desafios, né? Cada uma pessoa que falou aqui trouxe a sua realidade, trouxe a sua situação, trouxe a sua luta, né? E eu trago aqui hoje, né, esses desafios que nós estamos enfrentando aqui no Brasil. E é muito importante ressaltar esse papel das empresas, né, e das grandes corporações, das grandes investidoras que estão a cada dia compactuando, né, com toda essa destruição, não só de direitos, mas do meio ambiente e da vida das pessoas no planeta. Né? Então, enquanto as constantes invasões das terras indígenas por grileiros, garimpeiros e madeireiros deixam um rastro de destruição ambiental e etnocídio dos povos originários, na outra ponta da cadeia, acionistas internacionais colhem lucros cada vez maiores pelo seu investimento nessas áreas. A Articulação dos Povos Indígenas do Brasil e a Amazon Watch revelaram nos relatórios Cumplicidade na Destruição que a BlackRock é uma das principais investidoras nas empresas que mais destroem e violam os direitos indígenas no Brasil. Por isso que a PIB tem participado de ações, né, junto à BlackRock desde 2019. Já enviamos cartas e participamos de reuniões e com seus executivos, né? Mas a verdade é que, apesar do discurso, na prática, pouca coisa mudou. A investidora segue fazendo promessas com relação às suas metas para o clima, mas nunca deu uma resposta concreta às demandas dos povos indígenas. Do setor do agronegócio ao da mineração e energia, a BlackRock está financiando algumas das empresas que mais destroem a Amazônia e o meio ambiente e que violam direitos humanos no Brasil. Nós, povos indígenas, nós sabemos que tudo na vida está interligado. Sabemos que não adianta pressionar apenas o governo e as empresas que estão atuando diretamente nessa destruição. É preciso que as corporações financeiras que financiam as suas atividades fazem parte do problema e colaboram com o desmatamento desenfreado, com a produção com a poluição dos rios, com a violação dos nossos direitos, elas também sejam responsabilizadas. É por isso que nós estamos aqui hoje, reunidos, antes da Assembleia Anual da BlackRock, porque ainda acreditamos que é possível as corporações financeiras fazerem parte dessa solução. Os executivos e investidores da BlackRock precisam compreender o impacto do financiamento internacional em atividades extrativas e como cada uma dessas ações aumenta a situação atual de vulnerabilidade dos povos indígenas, contribuindo, assim, também para a distribuição do planeta. A BlackRock é essa maior gestora de investimento do mundo. A solução de salvaguardas explícitas para os direitos indígenas mandaria um sinal muito forte para as empresas e os mercados em geral. Nesse contexto, é importante falar de casos específicos que são emblemáticos e causam preocupação no movimento indígena. Um deles se refere ao aumento do interesse das grandes mineradoras em terras indígenas e o seu potencial de destruição. A abertura das terras indígenas para a mineração é uma prioridade do governo Bolsonaro. Esse projeto é inconstitucional e representa flagrantes violações às obrigações internacionais que o Brasil assumiu com relação aos direitos indígenas. Grandes mineradoras que tentam assumir esse rótulo de sustentável têm enormes interesses nos territórios indígenas, com centenas de requerimentos para pesquisar e explorar minérios dentro de nossas terras. Elas negam, mas sabem que esses pedidos garantem a elas prioridade caso a legislação seja aprovada. Elas querem ser as primeiras na fila da exploração dos nossos territórios indígenas. É o caso da Vale, que, além de ser campeã em violações socioambientais, avança há décadas sobre os territórios do povo Xicrim, às margens do rio Cateté, no Pará, poluindo os rios. É o caso também da britânica Anglo-América, cujos pedidos de pesquisa de minérios sobre as terras indígenas somam já mais de 132 mil hectares. E a BlackRock está entre as maiores investidoras da Vale e da Anglo-América. No começo do ano, junto com os parceiros da Amazon Watch, a PIB lançou a campanha Anglo-América, Fique Fora do Território Munduruku. Nossa demanda é para que essa empresa se comprometa a não minerar em territórios indígenas, independentemente das mudanças na legislação brasileira, que está sendo constantemente ameaçada pelo governo Bolsonaro e agora está como prioridade para ser aprovado logo nas próximas semanas. E tem essa intenção de legalizar todo tipo de crime ambiental, como desmatamento e invasão de terra. Por tudo isso, a BlackRock tem uma grande responsabilidade em pressionar a Anglo-América e outras empresas para que estas não contribuam para a violação dos direitos dos povos indígenas, principalmente o direito à consulta e ao consentimento prévio e informado, e para que elas não se tornem cúmplices da destruição das florestas e da violência contra os seus defensores e defensoras. Está na hora da BlackRock transformar seus anúncios em ações concretas para a defesa do meio ambiente, para a justiça climática e para a defesa dos direitos humanos. E finalizo chamando todo mundo, um chamado global, para o reflorestar mentes, reflorestar ideias, pensamentos e corações. Assim, vamos conscientizar as pessoas, salvar o mundo e replantar os nossos territórios. Sangue indígena, nenhuma gota mais. Muito obrigada.
Hey, obrigada, Sonia. Thank you so much. Wow, we need to plant new ideas and new ways of being. That is such a powerful thing to share with us, Sonia. Thank you. Chills. Okay, well, we are almost to the finish line, my people. Thank you for the 182 of you that are sticking through. This has been such a marathon. But without further ado, we're going to go into our second action, taking this beautiful energy and putting it right into a tangible action right now, 182 of us together. And I'm going to kick it over to Derek. And Derek from Little Sis and Erica from Acre to tell us what we're going to do next.
Yeah, thanks so much for inviting us to join you. It's really, really a true honor, and this has just been an amazing event with such powerful speakers. So, thank you. We're really excited to talk about a report that we just put out today. Actually, I'm sure that many people here remember the campaign to kick former ExxonMobil CEO Lee Raymond off of JP Morgan's board. As you'll recall, Raymond was JP Morgan's lead independent director, basically the most powerful person on the board besides the CEO. Our new report shows that BlackRock has its own Lee Raymond, and his name is Murray Gerber. Do we have the slides for this? Okay, cool, great. Can you go to the next slide? The one after that. Thank you so much. So Murray Gerber has been on BlackRock's board of directors since 2000, longer than anyone except Larry Fink. And since 2017, he's been BlackRock's lead independent director, the same position that Lee Raymond held at JP Morgan. And as lead independent director, Gerber has major sway over BlackRock's governance. And this makes it really alarming that he has such deep ties to the fossil fuel industry and is profiting in the millions as an active investor in fossil fuels. So Gerber has raked in over $3.4 million personally in compensation as a board member of Halliburton since 2012. And you might know that Halliburton is one of the biggest oil field service corporations in the world. And even more than that, at the start of the pandemic last year, Gerber bought over 500,000 shares of Halliburton stock when the stock price crashed because of the pandemic. So in other words, while millions were feeling the pain from the pandemic, Gerber was looking to profit big, and he profited enormously. He's profited over $7.5 million from those Halliburton stock purchases that he made last year at the beginning of the pandemic. And that's not all. Gerber's made tens of millions of dollars helping to oversee the Appalachian fracking boom as the former head of EQT Corporation. And he also sits on the board of US Steel, whose business model is deeply tied to fossil fuels. And again, this is the most powerful member on BlackRock's board besides Larry Fink. So while BlackRock says it supports climate progress, its lead independent director is aggressively trying to profit from fossil fuels. Gerber's supposed to be guiding BlackRock's board toward climate responsibility, but he's also supposed to be protecting Halliburton's fossil fuel profits as a director of that company. So there's a huge conflict of interest at the heart of BlackRock's board that should concern us all here. And with that, I will pass it on to Erica to talk about the impacts of Gerber's fossil fuel ties on frontline communities.
Yeah, thank you, Derek. And yeah, thank you so much to all of the organizers for having us today. I am just so grateful to be part of this and to hear all the powerful stories from incredible frontline leaders. Shout out to Nidia for gracing us with your fabulous facilitation. I know we're running short on time, but just wanted to quickly call attention to the ways that Gerber's ties to the industry are directly hurting frontline communities. So let's take a closer look at the company that Derek mentioned, Halliburton. They have been targeting fracking operations in Northwest North Dakota, which is on the homelands of the Mandan, the Hidatsa, and Arikari nations. And as many of you probably already know, fracking byproducts contain heavy metals and radioactive material, just really nasty stuff that can make drinking water extremely dangerous for surrounding communities. And recently, the local community discovered that the fracking operations have in fact contaminated the water, and it's been killing horses in the area. So clearly this has raised all kinds of red flags for the community about the safety of the drinking water for residents. And that's just Halliburton. It's just one facility. I also wanted to tell you about another company that Gerber directs, which is US Steel, and they do a lot of business with the oil and gas industry. Gerber has been on their board for 9 years, and we found that US Steel operates a coke manufacturing facility near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Coke manufacturing, if you don't already know, I didn't know until we worked on this report, but that involves heating coal at high temperatures for long periods of time. And children living near US Steel's plants have asthma rates 3 times higher than the national average. Low-income children and children of color are suffering the highest rates in the region. And in 2018 and then in 2019, those plants had 2 fires that knocked out emission controls and made pollution even worse for residents. So this is just a tiny sampling of the horrible things that Murray Gerber's companies are doing that he directs. So you can imagine all of the collective harm and environmental racism that his investments and his leadership have caused our planet and communities of color for the last 4 decades that he's been involved in the industry. So if we go to the next slide, this is why we think that Gerber's got to go. We, of course, have a long fight ahead of us to free ourselves of Wall Street influence, exploitation, and extraction. But an important and immediate action that we can take and that we think our report makes clear is BlackRock needs to kick Gerber to the curb. So with that, I'll pass it over to Daniel, who I think will talk us through an action that we can take together to call attention to this.
Yes, and before we do that, can I get a hey, hey, ho, ho, Murray Gerber's got to go, hey, hey, ho, ho, Murray Gerber's got to go, hey, hey, ho, 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 Murray Gerber's got to go, hey, ho, ho, Murray Gerber's got to go. All right, Daniel, let's take it to the next action.
Amazing. Thank you both so much, Derek and Erica. We have another opportunity right now to take direct action to pressure BlackRock on Murray Gerber. So we've already talked about how they obsess over their brand image, and their Instagram is another place they try to paint this picture of themselves as a good company with great values. So we are going to take direct action right now to disrupt that perception and make BlackRock listen. So please go ahead and open up the follow along doc, which you'll see up here. And you'll notice BlackRock has this pretty funny Instagram account. It's their Instagram account. It's called Life at BlackRock. Look at this employee. Oh my gosh, they've planted 12,000 trees. Amazing. No, not amazing. They are complicit in human rights violations around the world. The biggest investor in coal and oil. Their employees could never plant enough trees to even make a tiny fraction up for the emissions that they are responsible for. So we have selected 4 of their most greenwashing Instagram posts, which you can see here. Here's another one. We have this woman with a box of knickknacks, celebrating that she's, using less carbon in her own personal life. We all know that individual personal choices of just a few employees will never rectify BlackRock's harm. So what you're going to do is we're going to flood these 4 greenwashing posts with comments. So if you have an Instagram account, go ahead and open up these posts either on your desktop or go and find them on your phone. You could go to the document here and text the link to your phone and open it on your phone, however you like to get links from your computer to your phone. And you're going to post one of these sample comments or one that you've written yourself on their account. So let's see, here's a comment you might put. When you're spouting climate commitments, but you and your board are profiting from fossil fuel industries and climate chaos. Hashtag Life at BlackRock, hashtag Gerber's gotta go. So I'm going to go ahead and comment on this post here of this gentleman recycling in honor of Climate Week in New York City. As they were investing billions in oil and gas, this guy was recycling. So we're going to start to disrupt that image here. Just click post. And there you go. Now that comment is there. So you can also like other people's posts. I see some others have already gotten started. So go ahead and comment on, go ahead and flood their posts with comments. I find it easiest on the desktop, but again, you can of course access this from the Instagram app.
Thank you, Daniel. And while you all do that, we are going.
Yeah, we got one more part of this too before the song.
Oh, okay.
That's cool.
Cool. Well, also I wanted to name, I just tried to comment on their page and it says comments are limited. So some of you may pull this up and experience that they have blocked certain posts. So
interesting. I saw some participants commenting about that and then I was able to comment. So I'm not quite clear what they did. But if you can't comment on the posts, let me explain part 2 as well. And of course, all of this is laid out in this doc, so you can do it. If you don't get to finish all the comments now, you can do it right after. But next up, we are going to flood their inbox with messages as well. So if you go ahead and open up this Instagram post, which is the first post on the BlackRock's Big Problem page. So on your phone, if you go to the BlackRock's Big Problem Instagram account, you'll see this here. We have a story about why we need to fire Murray Gerber with some of the info that was just shared by our speakers. So what you're going to do is go ahead and share this to your story. You'll click this button and click share to your story. It looks a little different on your phone. Do this on your phone, not on your computer. And you're going to share it to your story and tag BlackRock. So when you do at BlackRock, they'll actually get a direct message in their inbox, in their Instagram inbox with this graphic. So we want to flood them with this so they really get the message that Murray Gerber is a climate criminal. He's profiting off the climate crisis and he has to be removed from their board. So again, the instructions are just share this to your story and tag at BlackRock. And if you want to add a caption, you can add a caption to let your followers know what's up. And for the pro Instagram users here, for our experienced users, we have all of these graphics in a folder. So you're welcome to download this and make your own story with the rectangular slides as well. And just make sure you're tagging BlackRock in everything. So we're going to give you a minute to do this while Neria and Lou share some beautiful music with us. I'm seeing that a few people have been blocked. Oh, you have to be following the page to comment. So yeah, click follow BlackRock and then make your comments.
Yay, thank you, Daniel. All right, let's hit it. All right, while y'all keep following the page and giving them a piece of your mind, we're gonna be singing to you. If you know the lyrics, sing along.
So shout out to all the people who are on the front lines. We're doing this like we mean it for you. Here we go.
Look at BlackRock's bloody hand.
Look at BlackRock's bloody hand. Here we go.
We're stealing blood from the guardians, defending sacred land. The Amazon's on fire. Look at BlackRock's bloody hands. They stealing blood from the guardians, defending sacred lands. The Amazon's on fire. Look at BlackRock's bloody hands. They're stealing blood from the guardians, defending sacred land. The Amazon's on fire. Look at BlackRock's bloody hands. Sing it with us. They're stealing blood from the guardians, defending sacred land. The Amazon's on fire. Look at BlackRock's bloody hands.
Look at BlackRock's bloody hands. Say that again. Look at BlackRock's bloody hands. One more time. Look at BlackRock's bloody hands. So just to use the power of music to also cast a spell out here about what we building while they building pipelines and building dams and building problems out here. I just want to shout out all the amazing work being done all over the world with this next song. So love and gratitude to the organizers, to the families, to the friends of this movement. We gonna sing this one real quick while we doing this action. Right. They want to build a pipeline. They want to build a dam. They building a movement to honor all our lands for freedom. Right here, right now. For justice. Right here, right now. Come on now. For freedom. Right here, right now. For justice. That's right. Right here, right now. Come on. They want to build a pipeline. They want to build a dam. We building a movement to honor all our lands for freedom. Right here, right now. For justice. Right here, right now. So there's just so much love and gratitude for y'all for taking this action you're taking now, for taking the action of gathering in community. Love, gratitude, respect. Remember to be nourished by the power of organizing, the power of people, the power of music, the power of creativity. We're gonna do it one more time, right? All right. They wanna build a dam. We building a movement to honor all our lands for freedom. Right here, right now. For justice. Right here, right now. Last time for freedom. Right here, right now. For justice. Right here, right now.
Thank you so much. All right, y'all. And with that, we've made it to, we're closing this time together with a beautiful poem from Sophia Palau, who is joining us. Last but not least, our youth have been such a force in the movement for climate justice. So last but not least, Sophia, Sophia's gonna be blessing us with a slam poem that she wrote, and she's coming from the Youth versus Apocalypse group out of the Bay Area, doing lots of work. Y'all hella inspire me. Thank you so much. So we could cue that video up. This is our little closing treat. Thank you so much, Sophia.
Hi, my name is Sophia Palau. I'm a representative from Youth vs. Apocalypse, and I'm very excited to speak today. I'll be reading a poem called Dear BlackRock. But first, my co-coordinator Lily Dodson from JICA will be talking a little bit about Line 3 in Wisconsin and how it's affecting the Anishinaabe people.
One example of why BlackRock is so harmful is that they are majorly contributing to the construction of Pipeline 3, a pipeline that would be incredibly negative to the environment and violates the treaty rights of the Anishinaabe people.
The Anishinaabe people are not the only ones that have been harmed by BlackRock and capitalism. As a half-native youth, I wrote this poem about how capitalism harms not only Native people, but the world and our entire society. Babies cough up blood in the streets, but big business sees it as money. But they kill all the bees who save us with their pollination and honey. All they can see are the triple dollar signs, while people in the street cry out to the great divine for salvation of a nation based off greed and capitalism. It denies people's most basic needs, and we need an exorcism for the hate that resides in the hearts of the powerful, even though their money is so plentiful. I wish I could see a future free of corruption and hate. Everyone would have their needs met. But until we win the battle, we can hope yet. The hate is driven so deep in our society, we need a complete rewriting of your colonized propriety. Because I was here first, when Turtle Island was filled with buffalo and trees. Because you labeled us Squanto and forced us to our knees. You lay on sacred earth, pollute the great creation with poisons, while your factories destroy our ozone layer, making us cough and hack in our destroyed nation. We're drowning in tar sands, we'll be buried on poisoned land. You claim all lives matter, but you poison us with a mixture of ocean pollution and an institution of racism for your personal gain. So what will you say? For my future is in pain.
Yes, give it up for Sophia. Come on screen and do some, little happy affirmations. Thank you so much, Sophia. I don't know if you want to share a few words with us. Oh, your connection's a little bit off, but you're getting so much love in the chat. I don't know if I'm the only one having a hard time hearing Sophia. Well, we just want to, if we could all just give Sophia our love. Thank you so much for blessing us with your poem. I'm seeing so much love coming to you. Caps lock, I love you, Sophia. You are the answer. You are the answer to the grandmothers the grandmothers prayed for. And again, please, we got to stand with our youth, our young people who are writing poetry and are coming up with the visions for the future that we are working to change. Again, thank you so much, Sophia. Thank you to all the speakers today who shared your wisdom. Thank you to all of you who, the 132 who stuck around for this amazing, incredible marathon, bringing frontline voices, bringing folks, scientists, elders, young people, congresswomen, like, whoa. I'm super honored to have shared this time with you all. And you can sign up to receive updates on this work. I don't know where that link is, but I imagine you'll get it in a follow-up email. And yeah, just Lazo Kamati for blessing me with your wisdom and for for all the work that we've done and all the work that we're going to continue to do to pressure BlackRock to divest and get their money out of fossil fuels and deforestation and into real climate solutions that heal our Mother Earth for the next 7 generations. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your day.